Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, Brett, we are here in episode 85 of the Glum Lot Podcast.
Hi, Mark.
So good to see you.
Man, it's been a while.
You haven't done this in probably a week and a half.
We had a couple loaded
right?
up. I got some stuff going on with my wife, and so it is good to be back in the saddle, I'll tell you.
And also, we want to remind our listeners to join the Facebook group at the Glum Lot Podcast at facebook.com. And also, if you want to get in touch with us, be a guest, have some ideas for a guest, whatever, the Glum Lot Podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it out there. We'd really love to hear from you. You know, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, we don't just say this just to say it.
No, we want to hear from you.
We mean it.
Yeah, give us some feedback, whatever.
Yeah, feed us
we
back.
want to do a good job here, and it's all for you. So bring it.
It's all for you. What do you got on your mind today, sir?
A lot of rumblings tonight at a meeting that we were at about love and tolerance, and that really piqued my interest a little bit.
How so?
Well, the love part I get, right? There was a lot of people talking about how, they really didn't love anybody but themselves, but they love people now and that, love unconditionally and all that.
Yeah.
But the tolerance part, there was a little bit of a struggle with. And
there can be, yeah. And that's something that changes probably depending on your spiritual condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even by an hour, my goodness.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I can see how that happens. But, we're told that these things are human things and we aren't perfect.
Have you ever a lot of people talk about driving, and because driving out in the world is something that we all experience. And, there's personalities of drivers, and people do shit that they wouldn't normally do.
And where we are, it snows, and then people go 40
And have you ever
miles
noticed
an hour
how sometimes you're like, why am I getting so pissed off today?
Why am I ripping the steering wheel off?
Yeah, but I wasn't like that yesterday.
Right.
A lot of times things happen in traffic, and I have really learned to kind of just ignore it and move along and drive defensively, and I don't really get pissed off about getting cut off unless it's really fucking aggressive.
Oh, sure. Right. Something that puts me in danger.
Yeah, but for the most part, I mean, you see it on the road constantly, people flipping each other off.
Oh, yeah.
Honking, screaming at each other. And
it's not a glum lot out there.
Hell no, it's an angry lot.
But I think one other thing that I heard is somebody that really gets upset about somebody, and then they feel justified to say something about it, and they should, so they do, and then they find out something that's going on in that person's life. Right. And so then you feel like a bag of shit.
Yeah. And you're like, what a dick.
So one of the things that I always learned on that topic of tolerance is when you're interacting with somebody like that, try and seek to understand instead of reacting. And that was a big thing for me to learn. It served me well.
Better to
I have
understand.
to seek to understand you all the time, including tonight.
Better to understand than be understood.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, yeah.
All right. Love and tolerance, brothers and sisters.
Peace and love.
Yes.
Peace and love.
Hey, we've got a guest on the show today that I've known since he moved back to the area.
Yeah.
And cool guy, good sobriety.
Great grasp on the program. Great messages.
Oh, let's puff him up some more.
Well, I will. I mean, when we have somebody that way.
But let's welcome to the show, Kevin. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
He
yes,
nods.
You can talk now.
Welcome to be here.
Yeah, there we go.
People can't hear you nodding. I mean, maybe if your neck's a little jacked up, they can hear it.
Oh, gosh.
So let's start with your sobriety date.
2/14/24.
Is that Valentine's Day?
Yes, it is.
My goodness.
Man, you gave yourself
that.
You gave yourself a Valentine.
It's quite the Valentine's Day.
And you're coming up on a year
That doesn't seem possible.
like 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Dang,
How about that?
Son.
Man, that
Love
went by
it.
fast.
Love it.
Maybe not for you, but it did for us.
So we like to rewind to the beginnings of your experience with drugs and or alcohol, and you probably listened to the podcast, so you know what we do. So tell us how you got started.
Yeah, all the details.
Well, probably like most alcoholics, I got started drinking, I want to say 13 or 14 years old. And my dad's side comes from a big Irish family, so drinking was just kind of what we knew, what we, what I was used to. And got
It's
into
part of your culture, right?
Yeah, big time. And got into drinking early, hard liquor. Was never really a beer guy, so it was transitioned to scotch real fast. And
This is when you were a teen?
yeah,
You were a
Wow.
classy teen.
Man, went right into it.
Scotch on the rocks with your pinky out.
yeah. The only thing was I always had to buy my own because no one else was drinking
Right.
it. So.
Everybody else is drinking from a keg, and you're like, that doesn't work well.
Do you
for me.
remember your first experience?
Yes. My parents were gone, and I went into their little liquor cabinet, which had a lock but was never locked up, and had some sherry, I think it was. And the burn it put in my belly, I didn't think I was ever going to drink again, and then that went away about 20 minutes, and I was drinking more, and it was like a reddish color. I still had the brilliant idea on my first drink to fill it up with water, see if they didn't notice, and then I started drinking a little bit of vodka because that was clear and that worked. And
Did you get a feeling?
I got a great feeling, and it lasted I was chasing that great feeling for a long time, and like we always say, it worked until couldn't
Sure.
find it anymore. So
Yeah.
led me here.
So now I know that you were quite an athlete in school, right?
Yes.
So how did drinking play with that?
I was able to manage it, which was probably some of the problem, is that when I was a big basketball player, and I really wouldn't drink much. And when I was younger, I was playing AAU in the spring, so I was traveling every weekend. So when my friends were out partying, doing things, I was just playing basketball.
Yeah, you were busy.
And basketball I've always had this obsession problem. When I was younger, I was obsessed with being the best basketball player I could. When I played in college, and when I got out of college, I was obsessed with working out, and then got back into basketball. And then kind of when COVID hit, I was always a drinker, but when COVID hit, my gyms got shut down, so I became obsessed with drinking alcohol.
So you almost had like an addiction to being great, addiction to doing better at things and being the best. And then when that stuff kind of went away, your addiction transferred over to something different.
I wanted to be the best drinker I could.
Yeah. So during that time when you're involved more in sports pre-COVID, what was your drinking like? I mean, did you drink alcoholically then?
It wasn't so much in high school. It was a little bit in high school off and on. But, in times when I wasn't playing sports or wasn't active in sports, I would drink and party. But when I got to college, it kind of became a mix of I'm going to try to do the best I can playing college sports, playing college basketball, but I was still going out and partying with all my teammates.
Yeah.
And that was kind of when the lines started to blur a little bit for me.
So did you see that you were drinking differently and more than other people?
Yes, I would turn into the loudest person in the room, wanted to drink more than what anyone else, and I had a much higher tolerance than most people too, so I was drinking more to what somebody else was drinking, and we were just kind of keeping up with each other, but my amounts of alcohol were
Yeah,
far
there's some
exceeding
science
other
with
people.
that with us alcoholics, that we can deal with that more.
Now, one thing that I noticed, looking back now that I can see, is that I drank more for effect than anything. And a lot of people that I drank with weren't like that. They were drinking to be part of the scene, to be social. They would have 3-4 beers. But mine was always like it was like a medication. It was like an addictive, way of drinking.
And the effect never got strong enough. It
Right,
seemed like.
right. And then, and the more I drank, the more I wanted.
Yeah,
of course.
absolutely.
All we want is
Absolutely.
more. So tell us about this transition in your drinking and the way you looked at it that happened after the gyms shut down and you kind of had to move on.
So I always loved the lifestyle of drinking and never really hit it. And for a while, my parents would always say, and my wife would say, you got to slow down with your drinking. And like everything else in life, I always was able to get myself out of, situations or things like that. So I really didn't think in my head this was any different. And started to golf a lot during COVID, and all of a sudden I realized everything I wanted to do, I then wanted to do with drinking.
Yep.
Whether it was, hanging out with my family, I would drink. Family parties, I would drink. Golf, I would drink a ton. And as much as I loved the lifestyle, came into more of I was drinking to feel a certain way and have that effect on my body. And, I understood that I had a problem, later. And looking back, I definitely had a big problem. But just even looking at the puffiness in my face when I look back in pictures, like it was obvious that I was out of control, but I was not willing to take anyone else's opinion about my drinking.
Right, you felt you were managing it fine.
Yeah, and I was, and grew up that, I was a man, I'd be able to figure it out, and like everything else, I usually could figure it out, so I thought, I'm fine. People are just worried about me when they should be worried about themselves, when they were worried about me and everything was justified.
Right,
So,
I'm not hurting anyone else.
No, and I didn't think so. I had my own businesses, we had a beautiful home, I have a beautiful wife, beautiful kids.
Now,
And
when you met your wife and got married, were you drinking alcoholically then?
I was, but it was more socially. Like me and her would drink together, and then when we got married, my wife had got pregnant within I don't know, say 6 or 9 months.
And how did that happen?
For a number of different reasons.
All the details.
So your wife has probably seen this change in you, right?
Yes.
And then you lost your drinking partner because of that, too.
Yeah, so I was drinking for her too. So
Yeah,
Nice. I'm drinking for two here. Look out.
That's right.
and like I've always said, like when we would go out drinking socially, I would see people sip drinks and leave drinks half, half empty or half full. Everyone look at it. And I just never understood that. I was always, if I ordered a drink at a bar, I'm going to finish it. If I had a drink at a party, I'm going to finish that and probably finish the one that's next to me. So I could never really understand somebody going out and having, 2 glasses of wine or 1.5 glasses of wine. I would go out.
Isn't that a funny quirk that we all have?
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I would look
I
like,
cleared out a whole wedding once
I would say,
of the tables, clearing them off. It's so disgusting
But it's
when I
so
think about
weird.
it.
I mean, I bartended in college, and then people would come in and they, give me a. And back then, this was pre 18 million different celebrity vodkas and tequilas.
Right.
Somebody would order a Stolishnoye, which was a Russian vodka back then. It was like the only one, and it was very expensive. And if you ordered it, you were like the shit. Mm-hmm. So they'd order a Stoli on the rocks or whatever, and they'd sip it, and half of it would be left, and they'd leave. And I'd be like, what kind of a psycho leaves half
drank
a
it.
Stoli
that's
on the
exactly
bar?
what I thought.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, you forgot to finish this. As they're walking out the door, they're like, what? No, I didn't. I'm leaving.
So when you got that feeling, was it what was it that you liked about it? Was it you were a different person that you wanted to be?
So
then?
I was always kind of on stage, as I like to think of it. Like when I'm working, I always, wanted to be the best businessman, do the best for my family, do the best for my business. And when I would drink, I could kind of let go, and whether it was forgetting about a hard day or a hard week at work or just relaxing and not focusing on, my mind was always moving 100 miles an hour when I was trying to sleep. I'd be thinking about business or, things that are coming up or things that had happened, and it was nice kind of just to unplug for a little bit.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden I was just unplugging all the time, and there was no control over it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When we come into the 12 steps, we talk about not lingering in the past and not looking into the future, but living in today. This whole one day at a time thing, what you just described, you're using alcohol for, we use one day at a time for. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole real, when we have that psychic change, that's part of it, as we learn to reframe our lives into one-day increments. Yep. It makes it just so much easier on us, and it's a battle. I mean, I remember early sobriety, laying in bed, doing exactly what you just talked about. Thinking back at what happened, thinking about what's coming up in the next week, and blah, 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 blah. And it's endless, and it's like a hamster wheel. And alcohol used to just slow that right down.
Made me feel normal.
Yes, it made you feel normal.
And that I could talk normally instead of having my brain be 50 minutes ahead of where I'm at.
Right. And so now we tell ourselves, hey, you know what? It's one day at a time.
Slow the fuck
And if we
down.
call another alcoholic, say, I'm really worried about what's going to happen next week, they go, well, that's next week.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it right now, so live in today. And we help each other out that way. But so, yeah, you're drinking alcoholically. Do you realize it?
Definitely not at first. No.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of just normal, and especially with how I grew up, that drinking and, was just, kind of what guys did,
Sure.
especially on the weekends. And so I thought that was normal.
Yeah, you get that whole work hard, play hard. I work hard. I deserve a drink.
Culture shows
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I realized I was hiding it is obviously when I should have realized that I had a problem. One of the first things that my wife did was she said, all right, there's no more scotch in the house, so we can drink wine. I'm like, okay, let's try it. So next thing you know, I'm drinking 3 bottles of wine a night.
Yeah.
And, the devil is so evil to me that it made it so that I could drink 2 bottles of scotch in a day and not have the smallest bit of a hangover. So then I'm thinking to myself, I really don't have a problem, because when I drank way less than this,
I don't
I'd
feel
have
like
a
crap.
hangover. Now I just feel, it's just a normal Monday morning or Tuesday morning for me. So, but looking back, when you start hiding it from your loved ones and, your wife, that's a clear-cut indicator that you definitely have a problem.
Did she, being that she was kind of the barometer, did she say anything about a change in your demeanor or personality when you drank?
So I was always somebody that used to be more of like a happy drunk, and it turned into I was swearing all the time, losing my, getting very angry, losing my temper, even, times of punching holes in walls, just over the littlest things that meant absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And at the time, you don't know this is a progressive disease, and that's what happens. Because I was always a happy drunk, too. By the time the idea of stopping drinking occurred to me, I was a very depressed guy.
Yeah.
And before that, I was like, "Oh yeah, let's drink. This is great."
Yeah, I went
I
that
love
way.
My
wife,
life,
my wife would say, "You don't want to go anywhere anymore. What is wrong with you? You don't go anywhere. You have no friends." I'm like, "Well, it's all their fault. All that crap." But it's true. I used to be the same way, the happy-go-lucky guy.
And you know what it is? We just want to get a buzz, and we want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's almost like you were talking about unplugging. It's like we're unplugging from life, and we're okay with that. We don't mind living like that. And I remember my dad. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was not a violent guy or not a fucking asshole. He was actually a very nice guy, but he literally unplugged from our lives for his entire life. He was a remote father. He was a good guy and a good provider, but he wasn't really a part of my life because he would come home from work with a buzz on from, after work bar, and he would just drink.
Yeah.
That's what he did, and he was happy that way, and that's what he wanted. But he did unplug,
And then if something gets a little uncomfortable, I'll just unplug a little more.
Yeah, and once you do that, you want to stay unplugged.
That's it.
So everything you do, golf, family events, blah, 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 I'll be there and it'll be fine, but I'm going to kind of unplug.
So when I first realized that I was starting to have a problem, I thought, all right, if I just change the people I'm hanging out with and don't do those things, I'll be fine. That turned into me just self-isolating and being in my house, drinking every single night, and it was to the point where I didn't think I could live without alcohol when I got to that point. So I would try to get, I think my best before I've had this stretch, I would maybe have 2 or 3 weeks was my best. And then I remember having a seizure at work at one of my pharmacies. And I thought it was a big deal. Doctors were like, "Oh, you just had a seizure. You're good." I was in the hospital for 3 hours.
What was the situation of your seizure?
I was at work, and I remember stretching out, just like a normal stretch, sitting in an office chair, having a seizure, and thinking, and I was maybe 10 days into not drinking at that point.
Okay, so this was after some sobriety.
Yeah. And
Just dry though, right?
Yeah, just trying on my own.
So 10 days without alcohol, you went into a seizure.
Yes.
And they didn't relate that to alcohol.
No, they asked
they
me
didn't
if
know.
I'd been drinking. I said, yes, I drink, all the time, but I stopped. I stopped for, I think I might have told them 2 weeks. I think it was maybe 10 or 11 days.
Right.
Yeah.
And they never thought, well, that might be a problem.
No, not
For a
at
dude
all.
like you.
And then I'm thinking, all right, they let me out. They never said it had anything to do with alcohol. I'm just going to go back to drinking.
Right.
So I started drinking again, and I want to say this was maybe in August, and I was fine for a while, then realized, all right, I got to stop this for a little bit. I was gaining weight. I had to get new clothes. My face looked puffier than, you could imagine. My skin I thought was tan, but it was yellow. My
Yeah.
eyes were.
You're starting to
you were
jaundice
seeing
out.
that.
I remember I went to the dentist, and she texted me when I left, great lady, and said, your eyes are very jaundiced and very yellow.
Right, you should get that looked into.
And I said, I'm fine. I'm trying to stop the line that I had said probably a million times.
I just really had to take a piss.
Did your wife ever mention your yellowness?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Did she say, you got to get this checked out, dude? This is not good.
And I just wasn't an adult. I wouldn't make doctor's appointments.
Scared.
I got a couple, I went to the doctors twice, and they said, you have, the first time I went, they said, we think you may have a drinking problem. You have a little cirrhosis. I was like, yeah, I'll be fine.
A little cirrhosis.
Jesus.
As long as it's just a little.
Tad.
I'm just being honest. That's
Yeah,
exactly
right.
what I thought.
How insane, right?
And then I got the endoscopy, and they said, yeah, you, because I couldn't even have my mom's sauce, Italian sauce. It was just burning
Burn your
everything.
esophagus.
So I started taking some pantoprazole, and I'm like, this is going to be fine. Fast forward to about a year later, we had planned a trip to Disney. And
Can I just stop you for a second?
yeah,
The period from when you first started to know that something was wrong with you, and did you know it was alcohol related?
yes.
Okay. Did you and your wife discuss it?
Yes, she would tell me, you got to stop. It got to the point where she wouldn't let me drive the kids anymore. Mm-hmm. She would find bottles of scotch hidden all throughout our house.
Okay, so you were hiding it, trying to hide it
Big
at that
time.
point.
I was hiding it in suit jackets, any place you could imagine, in the garage.
Did the thought ever occur to you to get help?
It did, but I thought I was just being nagged. And
The
really,
obsession
it was just,
took right over.
Yeah.
It was just my wife loving me and
Fine
trying
if she
to
wasn't
save
such
me.
a bitch.
I know, right?
In
Sorry,
that
by the
moment,
way.
Yeah, she's trying to save your life.
it was I thought everyone was against me, and
There it is.
fuck everybody else. I'm just going to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
And you justified it.
yeah, I could justify anything.
Yeah.
That's the other sick part about it. And
So you go to Disney on this trip.
we go there on a Friday, and
Kids are all excited.
This is
Everybody's
Florida, right?
ready.
Not
this
California.
is Florida. Yeah. So I don't remember any of this, but from the story my wife told me, I showed up at the airport on Friday, which was February 13th,
Now, were you and your wife together at this point?
off and on.
So
so that was even
had
happening.
she laid down the law and said, "Look, if this doesn't change, I'm out."
Yes, and she was out. She moved in with her parents.
Okay, so this is kind of an important part of your story. So this happens, and how do you take it?
I'm fine. She's the one who's messed up and not letting me see my kid. I mean, she was letting me see my kids, but there was restrictions, as there should have been. She was nicer to me than what.
Should have
If
been.
roles were reversed, it wouldn't have gone down like that.
Right,
So,
right.
So you had some resentments about it?
A lot of resentments.
So she's like to the point where she's like, "Look, I got to protect these kids. You aren't getting this, and there's nothing more I can do."
And I was just lying every day
Yeah.
Okay,
about not
okay.
drinking. And, I swore, and I think I've told you this before, like I would wake up thinking like today's the day I'm not going to drink.
Yes.
Swear to myself, and I 100% believed it. And then later in the day,
Boom.
I just couldn't stop.
That happened to me
Yeah.
over
Oh, my
and
God.
over, Groundhog Day style.
And it made me feel so shitty about myself.
Oh, yeah, the guilt.
It is
and
soul crushing, isn't it?
I felt so alone.
How can I not have enough
And you know what?
willpower?
If
I'm a
there's-
strong man.
If there's anybody out there listening, and this is going on in their life because it is soul crushing,
up.
and we will deny it somehow to ourselves, and get up the next day and do it again, full well knowing we're not going to make it, but we'll tell ourselves today's the day I'm not going
That's
to
why
drink,
it's a sickness.
and then we'll go, oh God, I can't believe I'm drinking again. Well, I'll be okay. And then the next day, if anybody out there is doing that, there is a way out. That's the
right.
important thing to know. There is a way out. You got to reach out for help. Go to a meeting.
Break the
Call
cycle.
the A line. Go to a rehab. There is a way out of this. So
And life can be better.
life can be so much better.
Didn't know that in the time. And like fast forward to a year, I never would thought. I was telling my wife this today. I'd be sitting here having a great relationship with you,
Yeah.
and over sobriety and just how great life can be. And it's really just a test to you cannot do this on your own. And I can't tell you how many times I tried to say, all right, I'm going to quit for my son. I love my son more than most people know me. Love him more than I'd love anybody in the world.
Of course.
And couldn't do it for him.
Even that wasn't
And I'm
enough.
like, you know what? I'll try for my 2 daughters who I love. Couldn't do it for them. Couldn't do it for my wife. Until I fully committed to, I got to do this for myself or I'm going to die. That's when things changed.
So was this trip to Disney like an effort to try and maybe for you to get back involved?
Yeah, so I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to drink this whole time, obviously.
Make it about family.
I'm going to do everything I can to have my kids and my wife have the absolute best time.
There you go, yeah.
And we get there. Friday was a blur. I was drunk on the airport, or on the airplane. Don't remember anything.
You could have been on the airport.
My wife says, yeah, I could have, and I wouldn't have known. So this is just...
Directing traffic.
Just so we're clear, I don't remember any of this. This is all a story told to me.
So you're fucking blacked out.
Gone.
I'm yellow as a taxi cab and stumbling around. My wife said, she would tell everyone at the airport, he's really trying his best. Like I couldn't even lift my luggage.
Oh my God.
And I wake up on Valentine's Day. It's like 7 in the morning. We go to use the bathroom to pee, and we're going to head out early to Disney. And that's where everything came crashing down. I had a seizure. I woke up to my son standing over me.
Oh, my God.
The ambulance came. This I do remember, and they wanted to see like how with it I was. They asked me who the president was, and I said Osama bin Laden.
Wow.
And that is 100% honest truth that I remember. And then...
Can I just want to clarify for the listeners,
Yeah.
the president was not Osama
Yeah,
bin
that's
Laden.
correct, yes. Yeah. We were just having an eye contact thing. We wanted to make sure
Just
that
make sure everybody knows
in case
that.
you were in that kind of reality, it's not
No,
true.
not true at all. And I looked at the paramedic, and she looked at me, and I was like thinking, wow, this person's dumb. She doesn't even know who the president is. So off to the hospital I go to.
Quickly.
And they diagnosed me with end-stage liver failure.
End-stage liver failure.
Gave me I think maybe they said 10 or 12% chance of living. And the next 2 weeks, all I remember is delusions of witches on the roof and creepy music and tremors, shaking. I tried to fight a couple male nurses. They had to restrain me to my hospital bed.
So you were full on DTs
Oh, horrible.
Wow.
while dying of a liver disease.
Yeah, it was bad. And they transferred me to a better hospital, which happened to be, I think, top 4 in the country for liver, so that was good. And I was in the hospital bed for 2 months, forget how to walk, can't even support myself, to get up and use the bathroom.
Right, there's muscle atrophy from...
Oh, yeah.
Plus your liver's shut down.
Yeah,
You're not eating, right?
No, I had tubes.
Feeding tube?
Yeah.
How are your kidneys doing?
My kidneys were, I don't know how, but were always fine.
Wow.
100% fine.
Wow.
It was just my liver was basically dead.
So when the doctors come in to see you, are they like, you're fucked?
Yeah, they said, they even told my wife and my parents who came down that he's not going to make it. So my parents started to think about life, what it was like, what it would be like without me. And my wife was, obviously very terrified.
What about you?
I was still out of it enough to not think it was a huge deal.
Right, like, what? I'll be fine.
And then I remember looking down when I first started to realize what was going on. I had so many needles and so many tubes in my arms and in my mouth and in my nose. I had a catheter in, and it was, you lose all respect for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was down there for 2 months in the hospital, and then I went to rehab right after that for close to 3 months.
So when you're in the hospital, what point do you have to get to for them to say you can leave?
So in the beginning, there was an insurance battle and some stuff with just they basically wanted to kick me out of there, and my wife. So the first week we were down there.
They don't want to pay for you to be there.
No. And the first week I'm down there, my wife would stay with me for a little bit, and then she'd take the kids to Disney because I wanted my kids to still have a good time.
Which must have been hell for her.
Yeah, probably the worst trip of her life.
Yeah.
Disappoint. Oy, oy, oy.
And she's such an amazing mom that my kids still think it was such a great time, and Daddy was just sick.
Yeah.
Bless her heart.
And which I don't know how she, the first time I met her, I knew that she was going to be an amazing mom, and she's far exceeded my expectations, obviously. But so they did that, and then she went back to our home, flew back, and she spent the next 2 months on the phone with the insurance companies fighting them because they didn't want to pay for anything.
And you were still down in the hospital?
Still down in the hospital.
Did the doctors talk to you about your alcoholism?
Yes.
What kind of take did they have on it?
They said, how long have you been drinking like this? I said, did you not know that you had cirrhosis? I said, yeah, I didn't think it was a big deal.
I heard it could regenerate. I just drank less.
And they looked at me like I was crazy, and they would come in every other day and say, what was your sobriety date? And for the life of me, I couldn't remember the same date ever.
Yeah, you gave them a different one every time?
Yeah.
You say, I have cirrhosis, but I don't have multiple cirrhosis. They're like, that's multiple sclerosis, you idiot. You're dying.
Jesus.
It was bad. So when they transferred me to this other hospital, they said, your liver's basically dead. And
Like they didn't even talk transplant?
Not at that point,
Yeah,
no.
because it's so...
It was so far gone that
Yeah.
I wasted on this guy. And they're like, do you want to stop drinking? And I was like, yeah. At that point, I still wasn't convinced. And I remember, like, having my, I guess, come to Jesus moment of my kids are going to remember me as a loser, drunk guy who wasn't around and didn't care enough to be around them. Or do they want to remember the guy who was down and out and fought for his life and came back to be, the best dad he could be? And my biggest goal is for my kids to just think I'm a cool dad and a good dad. So that's when I decided to dig in and fight. And it was a long, long fight. The days were long, but as I'm sitting here, like, the year is short. Like, it's amazing what the human body can do in a year if you just put your mind to things. A full 180 to where I was.
So when you're in there and they say your liver's dead, are you saying, well, wait a minute now, if I do the right things, can I regenerate it to some degree?
So I was asking all those questions, and my mom came down and stayed with me when I was in the hospital. And she obviously, I can't imagine seeing, my son like that, so I can't imagine what was going through her mind. But she asked a lot of the questions while I was still out of it, because I was on so much medication that it's brutal. When you're in the hospital, they tell you got to get some rest, get some sleep, but then they check your vitals every 2 hours.
Yeah. All right. You're
with
not getting
needles and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good night's rest. Then going to rehab and laying basically on a cot for 3 months. I didn't have a good night's rest for probably the first 7 months of, trying to be sober. But asking the questions like, you're so far gone, we don't think, maybe if you go to rehab and prove that you want to be sober, we'll possibly put you on the list. So I'm like, okay, First I told them no, and I told my wife that they said they didn't have a bed for me.
Damn.
And
Still going.
Yeah.
That denial
It is unbelievable.
is a motherfucker.
I'll tell
the
you.
disease that tells you you don't have a disease.
So then I get a call
can
2
be
hours later. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Who was that?
My wife. I talked to them. I go, okay, all right. Well, I'll give it 30 days. So
Oh, how nice.
I couldn't walk at this point. I was using a not a transport chair, but almost like a wheeler, and it was brutal. I still suffer from neuropathy in my feet, but it was to the point where my feet would swell. I would have to go walking back and forth to classes, and this is when I got to rehab, and my feet would swell up so bad that you could see the line around where my socks were.
Yeah.
That I'd have to put my feet up.
Now,
all the time.
how old were you when you went to rehab?
I was 38.
Okay, so you're a young man, relatively young guy.
Yep.
And, perhaps your life of physical, sports and stuff helped you. The fact that you were at one time in good shape, a lot of times that helps a person in recovery. Mm-hmm. That they took care of themselves, at least for a while.
So when I was in the hospital at the end, they told me the rules were you always had to have somebody walk with you. Mm. I was so, like I said, I've always had an obsession problem. My new obsession was I'm going to learn how to walk again as fast as I possibly can. So I would get out of bed, grab my thing with, with all the needles and all the fluids, pull that with me while I was using my little transport chair and just walk the halls. And how many times I got yelled at for doing that in the middle of the night. Then I got better that I could walk a little bit and just hold on to somebody. So eventually, I think a week after being in rehab, it was pouring out, and it was either get soaked and use your little wheelie or walk yourself and have an umbrella. So anyone who knows me, I hate getting poured on for whatever reason. So I'm like, fuck this.
Grab an umbrella.
I grabbed the
Sensory
umbrella.
issue.
I never went back after that. So
Huh.
I limped and did the best I could. I fell a bunch of times.
So
didn't
what
stop
was
me.
what was your experience in rehab like? Did you have an open mind?
Not right at first. I mean, I was ready to be sober, but I just wanted to do my time and get out of there. And probably about the time, maybe 2 weeks in, so you don't have your phone the first week. So that was where I was the most scared for whatever reason. And I have this thing like I'd like to just be able to call my wife or call my kids whenever if I want to. That being taken from me, I felt like I was on the other side of the world, just in my mindset. So I got through that first week, then I was able to talk to them a little bit that my wife would put up with me at this point.
Yeah.
But I was putting my time in, and then at some point everything clicked for me that I looked back and was so narcissistic in my actions that everything was all about me. I'm looking to, just take care of me and what's in it for me. And at some point you have to look to something bigger than you because you can't fulfill your wants and desires. So that kind of brought me to, which me and Mark have talked about before, brought me to having some humility and realizing that I have to go towards a higher power because I can't do this myself.
Was that taught to you in rehab?
Not really, no.
It was
They gave us a bunch of books, and couldn't walk a lot of times because I'd be having to put my feet up. So I was doing a lot of reading, and it was just my moment of, okay, this kind of makes sense. I actually don't control how the world works, and I need to appeal to something greater than myself. And that's, where I started to get my momentum.
Was there any exposure to any of the steps or any different programs?
So
that
we
they
went through the
offered?
steps, nothing like how me and my sponsor have gone through it, but not at all, completely opposite. It was, work, let's read this step, almost really just like read the top title of the step. Then you go read it on your own and talk about it a little bit in your group therapies and stuff like that. And then, all right,
Quick
2 days
succession.
later, we're on day.
Kind of old school. Yeah.
Yeah, and nothing really sunk in. I mean, a little bit did because
Sure.
I'd never been exposed to it before, but nothing. I've gotten far more work with my sponsor and far more out of that than I did at rehab. It was more a self-fulfilling thing than working with somebody.
So you were at rehab for 3 months.
Yeah.
That's a
Dang,
long one.
That's a long one. You might have to
So I was in
on that.
Florida for almost 5 months total.
You go to Disney, and boom, you're there for 5 months. Damn!
Man.
Take it away.
Well, like what we've talked about, it took, and I don't really believe in coincidences, but it took somebody greater than myself intervening in my life, knowing that this idiot is just a drunk and he's not going to stop. So we got to do something about it. And they hit me because my wife told me later on that she was planning on leaving me for good if I didn't get my shit together. And it was right around that time that she said if she didn't have a good time at Disney, she was probably going to leave me.
No shit.
That's what I found out after.
And that's when that hit you, and that's when you got.
But man,
that was your reality check.
Yeah.
But she still advocated that even through that, though.
Yeah.
That's crazy. You need to draw her a bath.
Yeah, absolutely.
Draw her a bath.
Yeah.
What are we in England?
I'd
Well,
love
that's-
to.
You need to make her a cup
That's
of
actually
tea.
something that was told to me quite
Really?
often
You need to
early in
draw
my
her a
sobriety.
bath.
Yeah, Scotty used to tell me that.
Really? No,
You go
you need
home
to
and you
girl-
draw your wife a bath and tell her how grateful for her you
No
are.
shit.
Yeah.
That's pretty old school.
Yeah, it
Well,
was.
thinking about it now, like I consider myself, always thought I was a good person, but the alcohol screwed with who I was as a person.
You probably were.
But what she's done for me and my wife, I just can never repay her for keeping our family together, holding it down, having my kids continue to excel in things, and now I can.
Yeah, and the best amend we can make is to stay sober and work the steps in our life.
Absolutely.
And take care of the people around us and help.
Because like
people.
we've talked about, the steps have helped me with alcohol, but it's also helped me with
Life.
1,000 other things in life of
Yeah.
not having certain triggers and limiting how if my defects were a 10 when I was drinking, maybe now they're down to a 4 now. I still have them, obviously, and I probably
Always
will forever, but they're not nearly as bad, and I'm a better person than I was before I was heavily drinking.
They don't control you like they used to.
So you're in this rehab. by the time 90 days rolls around, are you like sick of it?
So it was 81 days I was down there, and I'm in group. And my wife calls me and said, or texts me. You're not supposed to, do anything on your phone when you're in group, but text, call me immediately. I'm like, all right, I got to go out. My wife's calling me. So I go out, and she says, I just talked to your doctors. You can leave.
Damn.
I was like, what? Because they originally said 30, then they said 60. So I'm like, I don't know when I'm ever getting out of here.
This may be I may be here for the rest of my life.
And I'll tell you, being in Florida, there are animals that do not exist in any other place in the world.
The bugs especially.
I remember
Look
in the
like
middle of the
dinosaurs.
night, I looked up, and for the most time, I was in a single, which was, thank God.
Yeah.
But I looked up, and I thought I saw something move. I'm like, nah, I turned the lights off. And then I'm thinking about, like, maybe there was something there. I turned the light back on. There was a spider the size of someone's fist. I swear to God. I went to hit it. This thing moved so damn fast, I missed it. I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning trying to find this thing. I found it in the bathroom. Somehow got up there. I didn't have the strength to get up there. Swatted it down, grabbed it, threw it, and flushed this thing down the toilet. And stood over the toilet for about 5 minutes.
Just
and
make
went
sure
down.
it wasn't coming back
I'm
after you.
thinking, guess what? I'm going to be sober, and I'm never coming back.
I'll never set foot in the state
Thank
of Florida
God for that
again.
spider.
So the joke with my house and my wife said, do you want to take the kids to Disney? I go, we can go to California anytime you want.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
going
right.
to Florida.
Hell with that.
I'll go to Disney France. So the day arrives, and you're ready to go home.
The
Do you have a
doors are thrown
plan?
open.
Do you feel like I really want to get sober? Now, at this rehab, are you attending outside meetings at all or no?
I went to like maybe 2 or 3 meetings, but they allowed us to work out, which was huge for me. So I was doing
Yeah,
cold
okay.
tubs, cold plunges. I was swimming because I couldn't do like real weights because my feet were so messed up. So I was working out, and I pictured myself back in like being in high school and having a goal of like, all right, I'm going to try to be as fast as I can, strong as I can, to be the best basketball player. And here I was thinking, like, if I can just get my feet back together, get my body back together while I'm working on my mind, then I'll be able to be an awesome dad and awesome husband.
Yeah, and that
whole
physical
package.
exercise can be such
It was
a
stimulating.
great part of recovery.
They had saunas and steam rooms down there too, which I always
Were
loved
you at the
before.
Ritz-Carlton rehab? Or?
Jesus.
So this place was great. It was off campus, obviously, but it was where one of the major colleges down there, all the athletes and the swimmers worked out.
Wow.
So we had access to that, which was nice. And it was only people that had cirrhosis or liver failure that could go to this
Oh, no
spot.
shit.
Oh, okay.
So it was a blessing.
So did you go to outside meetings, like regular AA meetings?
So the transportation was always, we'd show up and the transportation wouldn't show up. So I think I ended up attending maybe 3 or 4 meetings. But we had meetings on site, on campus every single day, sometimes 2 a days that I was going to.
Okay.
So I prided myself on not missing any classes and not missing any meetings or anything like that. All the volunteer stuff, I went to everything.
You're such an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Even in recovery, we are alcoholic,
Yep.
right? That's good though.
Yeah.
So the day comes, you come home. You fly home.
Yep. I fly back, and my mom and dad picked me up. My dad actually videotaped it. My mom, I've never seen somebody so happy. It was like I was a little kid again.
Yeah.
And I saw my wife and kids 2 days later and moved up to where they were staying, and never really thought about alcohol, but this is where I got to the point where I had developed and kind of evolved much faster than the people around me. So there was absolutely zero trust, which I understand, but it was hard
Yeah.
for me at that point.
I think that's very
Oh,
common
yeah.
with us, that we go through this change
We think everybody's going to notice.
and we're like, we're different.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you don't look different.
And I wanted the applause and the,
Oh,
the
yeah.
gratitude, and nothing came. So I'm like, all right, I got to get used to this. So my wife tested me a bunch, and I obviously was clean, which felt great because she was testing me before, and I'd give her every
Yeah.
reason. Oh, I had mouthwash, or
Oh, she was breathalyzing you?
yeah, before. But
Okay.
then when those breathalyzers are shit anyways.
They are. They're terrible.
But now it's amazing that when I'm not drinking, that I don't have any problems with the breathalyzer. But
Yeah.
I think she
Right.
got a good one finally.
Now I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, finally one that worked.
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
I
yeah.
got to tell you, my daughter had a graduation. Well, I had a graduation party for my daughter here, and I didn't want anybody driving drunk. So my thing was, I took the kids' keys, and you couldn't get them back unless you blew in the breathalyzer. Well, I got this thing. I ordered it off of Amazon.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm like, yeah, I got a bread. Blah, blah. I blew into it, and it said I drank. I'm like, I haven't drank in 35 years,
It's
man.
still there.
Holy
They say once you're
shit.
pickled, you're pickled.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, these things are garbage.
Yeah, you wonder
can't
what the
really
cops are using these days.
Yeah, I don't know,
Honestly.
man. But so you get back, and it's a world of, this is different. Nobody
different.
understands how sober I am.
Trust may not be there.
And do you get right into going to meetings?
No. My first meeting, I want to say, after I got up here was probably 10 days. The first meeting I went to was Noon Traditions, and that was a shocker for me.
That is a
That
shocker.
was that's a meeting we have around here. There's a lot of retired people in it.
And I got back, my wife was like, how was it? I go, it was a little fucked up.
I got to be honest with you.
I'm not sure if I'm going back. And she said, I've got this girlfriend that her dad's all about it, and I want you to meet him. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Well, I want to say maybe 2 weeks after that, I was like, you know what, I'll give this a try because what I'm doing, I'm afraid it may not work. So I didn't want to step back. And like I've always said, I like my momentum, I like my meetings, I like my schedules, and I like to be able to just stick to that, which is just like a typical alcoholic, I guess. But in this sense, it works for me.
All right.
Well, it's redirected in a different way, in a good way.
So you call this guy, and from what I understand, he's a bit of a douche.
Yeah, at first, definitely a douche.
Yeah. So what happens? Did you turn him around?
Yeah, he turned me around is what more
shit.
happened, yeah. So
I think that guy just wanted to hear that he's not a douche.
For the listener, I am the douche.
Here it comes.
yeah, so
Notice how everybody's silent right now.
Here he goes.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
fucking ego.
Anyways.
So we start working the steps, and you like it.
I love it.
Yep.
I love that it helps me stay sober. I also love how I can apply it to every other part of my life.
And
It's a way of living.
you start going to meetings on a regular basis.
I actually enjoy and look forward to going to meetings. Whereas I had gone to AA before I went to Disney, and I would, more often than not, I would drink going there and drink the minute I got out of there.
Yeah.
And not say a word when I was in there and thinking I was hiding it and what an idiot I was.
Yeah, but you weren't
Maybe
ready.
still am, but not about that.
You
though.
you weren't ready.
And you had some clarity
Yeah.
this time around, too. Clarity of mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, your higher power kind of slapped you around a little bit. We all got a different bottom. Yours is pretty extreme. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of extreme ones, but, being told that you're not coming back from this, that's a fucking wake-up call.
And the funny thing was, like, in my head, I was always playing out, like, you know what, I never got a DWI.
Oh, yeah. More
Never lost a
justification.
job.
Yep.
Never lost a job.
Same.
Always was a great provider for my family.
Just put holes in the walls.
Never had any car problems.
Right, never
and then
crashed.
I thought, like, those things made it okay I passed the eye test. I'm good to drink. Like,
yeah.
Right.
It's just so foolish to look back on. But then I just think about the circle that I used to run with, on the golf course or things like that, and just how out of control I was.
Yeah.
And I can't really pinpoint why. But I don't know.
Probably because
You're
you're an
insane.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look back on it. So I understand as well that you did get some good medical news recently, right?
Yes, my liver's finally starting to regenerate.
Damn.
And, for a while, they wanted me to originally go to rehab to stay sober, to prove I wanted to, get on the list. And then when I got back here, they said, we want to do it maybe in like 10 years because the chances of
liver transplant,
in 10 years, because they usually last about 30 years.
Yep.
And they don't want to have the chances of survival goes down by, I think,
The
30
older
or
you are.
35% on the second time because it's your body trying to
Reject
recognize a new organ for the second time doesn't work as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, I'm committed to staying sober, and how amazing, life is that you stay sober and things, rebound for you, and told you don't need another transplant.
I mean, I
'Cause I was
remember when-
dreading that, absolutely dreading
Oh,
that.
Yeah,
hell
it's a big deal, man.
We just had somebody on that had it happen. It was a childhood friend of mine that had a transplant. And it's a
My
big
father
deal.
had liver transplant.
Yeah, that's
It did
right.
not go well.
Yeah, that's right.
He lasted 3 years, and it was a fucking terrible 3 years.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I went through a ton of shit last year in the hospital, not afraid of much. That frightens me.
Sure. Yeah.
Any hospital visits now frighten me. When I got out, one thing I forgot to talk about, maybe a month after I got back here, dropping my kids off at basketball camp, or my son off, and I'm driving. My wife brings him in, and all of a sudden I start feeling really funny. And, like, now I'm, like, more in touch with my feelings because I'm not
Drunk?
muting them.
Yeah.
And felt funny. My wife gets back in the car. She's like, all right, I forget where we were going. And I stopped, and I, like, started blinking my eyes, and she's like, are you all right? She's like, can we just get out of here? I'm like, I honestly don't think. And I was never anybody, like, I was the best drunk driver in the world. I was always everybody's drunk driver.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I can drive. She's like, well, just pull over in the parking lot over there. I'm like, you don't get it. I don't think I can drive. She goes, okay, pull over. So I go to get out of the car, get out of the SUV, go into the passenger seat. All I remember is stepping on the, the little rail to get in.
So, yeah.
And my wife says I just fell backwards, cracked my head, and had another seizure. So I get brought to the hospital, and I'm thinking, like, oh, my God, here we go all over again. And they said it was just an anxiety attack. I didn't have any neurological, anything that the
Any
symptoms
indicators?
I had. Yeah, that I had when I had the other
Was that when you would
seizures.
come into our rooms?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I remembered that.
Yeah.
Man, I remember you coming in the rooms. You weren't looking so hot.
No, I know.
And
That
now,
was,
my God, you're beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now you're a beautiful man.
I think that was my day before, the day of my 5 months, or
Yeah.
6 months, something like
Yeah,
that.
I remember.
But and I've been good since. So
Yeah. You came right in, too.
Yeah, and a lot of us drinkers, we do have anxiety, and alcohol takes care of that for a while.
Medicine. Yeah.
For a while, but then when you become sober, then you've got to maybe do something about it. Whether it's medication or learning to deal with the symptoms. Half of it's just recognizing what it is.
And accepting
exactly.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not uncommon at all. But so we are at the end of our time. But Kevin, it's been great having you. A great story.
And
Thanks
it's
for
been
sharing.
a pleasure having you in the rooms. I got to tell
Yes,
you, there's a
thank
lot
you.
of people. You have a really good message, and you inspire a lot of us. So
Thank you.
great job with that for sure.
Yeah.
So,
like what
yeah.
both you guys always say is the greatest thing about this is if just one person hears this, or one of us speak in a meeting, and
That's
we
right.
can help them, that makes our adventure and our journey that much better.
Just
right.
carrying the message,
That's
man.
right. That's it.
So until next time on the Glum Lot Podcast, I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
I'm Kevin.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.